The air in the boardroom was worth more than the building that contained it. It was a vacuum of bespoke suits, aged whiskey, and silent, predatory appraisal. Lena Washington felt the pressure of it on her skin, a physical weight. At the head of the polished obsidian table sat Kaido Ishikawa. He did not preside over the meeting. He was its center of gravity, a quiet singularity that warped the room around him. His suit was a custom Tom Ford, a shade of charcoal so dark it drank the light. A sliver of intricate, blue-black ink peeked from the cuff of his white shirt, the only hint of the world that lay beneath the flawless tailoring. The men lining the table, his lieutenants, his captains, his so-called shareholders, were wolves. Lena had seen their kind before, just in different clothing. Men who measured worth in blood and territory. But here, in this glass tower overlooking Tokyo, they called it market share. The Ozaki proposal gives us controlling interest in the port logistics, one of the men, Tanaka, was saying, his voice smooth with feigned deference. Their terms are generous. Kaido's stillness was absolute. He had not spoken in 17 minutes. His long-fingered hand rested beside a leather-bound folio, perfectly relaxed, yet it was the most dangerous thing in the room. Lena knew. She had spent the last 72 hours with the numbers inside that folio, and they were a lie. Her job was simple. She was the new forensic accountant, flown in from a Chicago firm that specialized in discretion and didn't ask about the nature of its clients' empires. She was here to find the ghosts in the machine, the rounding errors that were actually stolen millions. She was supposed to be invisible, a tool. But the numbers in the Ozaki contract weren't a ghost. They were a bomb. The generosity is a Trojan horse, Lena said. Her voice was calm, cutting through the masculine hum. Every head turned. The silence that followed was different. It was not Kaido's controlled quiet. It was the shocked, sharp intake of breath before a kill. Tanaka's eyes narrowed into slits. He looked at Kaido, expecting a dismissal, an execution. Kaido's gaze finally moved, shifting from the middle distance to land on her. His eyes were not black, as she had first assumed. They were a deep, dark brown, the color of old cedar. And they held no surprise. Only a flat, unnerving curiosity. "Explain," he said. The word was not a request. It was a command, low and resonant. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. This was the line. She could soften her words, hedge her bets, protect herself.
Or she could do her job. She had always chosen the job.
It was the only thing that had never let her down. She slid a tablet across the polished table. It stopped perfectly before him. Page 4, subclause B. The asset valuation for their shipping fleet is inflated by 30%. It's based on phantom vessels, ships that were registered but scrapped 2 years ago. She didn't look at the tablet. The numbers were burned into her memory. Page 7. The debt-to-equity ratio assumes our capital infusion will service their pre-existing liabilities with the Hong Kong triads. Liabilities they failed to disclose. It's not an investment. It's a bailout. She met Kaido's eyes directly. And the final page, the exit clause. It's reciprocal. If we default, they seize our assets at the port. If they default, the penalty is capped at a fraction of our initial investment. They've structured it, so they can't lose. You sign this, Mr. Ishikawa, and you're not buying a port. You are funding your own execution. The room went cold. Tanaka's face was a mask of fury. To be contradicted was one thing. To be dismantled by a woman, a foreign woman, a black woman whose curves were a stark contrast to the sharp, lean lines of everyone else in the room, was an unforgivable insult. Kaido Ishikawa did not look at Tanaka. His eyes remained on Lena. He slowly reached out and picked up a pen, a ridiculously expensive Montblanc. He tapped it once on the Ozaki contract. A single, sharp sound that echoed like a gunshot. "The meeting is over," he said, his voice unchanged. The men, even Tanaka, rose as one, a silent, disciplined retreat. They filed out of the room, their animosity a tangible force left in their wake. Lena remained seated, her hands clasped in her lap to stop them from shaking. She was alone with him. The heavy door clicked shut. The silence that filled the space now was his. It was vast and knowing. He still had not looked away from her. "What is your name?" he asked. "Lena Washington." "Lena Washington," he repeated, the syllables a strange, foreign texture in his mouth. He said her name differently than anyone else had. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. A claim. "You have made a powerful enemy today." "I was just doing my job." "Tanaka does not see it that way," Kaido said, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. "He brought me this deal. You have cost him a great deal of face. In my world, face is worth more than money." He rose from his chair, a fluid, economical movement. He was taller than she'd thought, his frame lean but broad at the shoulders. He moved like the room owed him space. "Come with me." He didn't wait for her to agree. He walked to a door behind his chair she hadn't noticed, a panel of dark wood that blended seamlessly with the wall. It hissed open, revealing a private office. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, a primal instinct screaming at her to run. But where would she go? She was in his tower in his city. She stood and followed him. The door closed behind her, sealing her in. That was the moment everything changed. She had stopped being an employee. She had become his problem. His office was a testament to brutal minimalism. A single desk of steel and reclaimed wood, a wall of books, and a floor-to-ceiling window with a god's-eye view of Tokyo. He walked to the window, his back to her. "The full Ozaki files are on that desk," he said, his voice a low murmur against the glass. "Every piece of correspondence, every preliminary draft. I want you to find out who inside my organization helped them build their Trojan horse." He turned his head slightly, his profile sharp and severe against the city lights. "You will stay here until you do. You will eat here. You will sleep here. You are not to leave this suite." It was not a request. It was an imprisonment. Forced proximity, gilded in luxury. "And if I refuse?" she dared to ask. He turned fully to face her. "Tanaka believes you're a corporate spy sent by a rival. He thinks you've fabricated your findings to sabotage this deal. He will not stop until he has proven it. Right now, the only thing keeping you alive is my curiosity." The threat was not loud. It was a simple statement of reality, delivered with the chilling calm of a man who dealt in such truths every day. This was the re-hook, the raising of the stakes. She wasn't just an accountant who'd found a discrepancy. She was a witness, a liability, and a shield, all at once. Days bled into one another. Lena worked, fueled by black coffee and the catered meals that appeared silently outside her door. She slept on a plush sofa in the adjoining lounge, the city lights a constant, unblinking audience. She mapped out the Ozaki clan's financial network, tracing shell corporations and laundered funds through a labyrinth of international banks. The work was an anchor in a sea of uncertainty. It was the only thing she controlled. Kaido was a ghost. He would appear without a sound, standing in the doorway watching her, his presence a sudden drop in the room's temperature. He never asked for updates. He simply observed, his dark eyes taking in the chaos of papers and data streams she had created. One evening, deep into her third sleepless night, she found it. A single wire transfer, small enough to be a rounding error, from one of Kaido's holding companies to a shell corporation owned by the Ozaki clan. It was authorized by a junior executive in Tanaka's division. It was the seed money, the payment for the inside information, the proof. Exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. She must have drifted off, her head pillowed on a stack of financial reports. She woke to a new weight on her shoulders. It was his suit jacket. The fine wool was heavy, impossibly warm, and it smelled of cedar and something else, smoke and cold night air. Her eyes fluttered open. He was standing a few feet away, watching her, his expression unguarded in the dim light of the monitor. For a split second, she saw something other than the cold, calculating boss. A flicker of something. A deep, profound weariness that mirrored her own. On his desk, pushed to the side, was a small, silver-framed photograph. It was of a woman with a sharp, intelligent face and a defiant smile. Lena had noticed it before, but had been too afraid to look closely. In that moment, she felt a pull toward it. She was my partner. Kaido's voice was quiet, startling her. He had noticed her gaze. In business, she was brilliant, but she trusted the wrong people. A deal much like this one. I warned her. She thought she knew better. He looked away, back toward the window. The cost of her mistake was absolute. That was it. The wound. The vulnerability he carried like a shard of glass under his skin. A woman he failed to protect, a loss tied not to a gun, but to a ledger. He saw a ghost of that failure in this room, with her. He turned back, his face a mask once more. Have you found him? I have, she said, her voice raspy with sleep. The next day, the danger escalated. As she was being escorted by two of Kaido's men to a more secure data center in the building's sublevels, the elevator lurched to a violent stop between floors. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. A moment later, the emergency power kicked in, casting the small space in a hellish red glow. Through the speaker, a digitized voice spoke in Japanese. One of her guards paled. What did it say? Lena demanded. The younger guard, his face slick with sweat, translated. It is the Ozaki-gumi. They say they know the accountant is here. They want you.
She had a choice.
In the ensuing chaos, as Kaido's men barked into their radios, she saw an opportunity. They were distracted. She could find a way out, disappear into the city. Kaido's lieutenant, a severe man named Hideo, had offered it to her a day ago, a new passport, a plane ticket, a life far away from this. She could run. But she looked at the tablet in her hands, at the evidence she had uncovered. Running meant letting the traitor win. It meant letting Kaido's empire crumble from within, just as it had with the woman in the photograph. It meant letting him fail again. She made a deliberate choice. Get me back to the terminal, she told the guards, her voice steady. I'm not done, she would stay. She would finish this. The moment the elevator doors finally opened, they were met with a scene of controlled violence. Kaido's men were in a silent, brutal firefight in the lobby with intruders dressed in black. It was surreal, like watching a movie with the sound turned off. All she heard was the sickening thud of bodies and the sharp click of gun slides. And then she saw him. Kaido. He moved through the fight not like a brawler, but like a surgeon.
Precise.
Lethal.
No guastimation.
He disarmed one man with a fluid twist of the wrist and incapacitated another with two swift strikes to the throat. He was not just a businessman. He was a weapon. An Ozaki soldier broke through the line, heading straight for her. There was no time to scream, no time to run. But Kaido was faster. He crossed the space in two long strides, his body a shield between her and the attacker. He didn't spare the man a glance. His focus was entirely on her. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice low and urgent, his hand gripping her arm. The warmth of his touch through her sleeve was a shock to her system. No, she whispered, her eyes wide. That was the moment one of them almost lost the other. The proximity, the scent of gunpowder and his cologne, the sheer, terrifying competence of his violence, it forged something between them in the heat of that moment. A bond of shared survival. To expose the traitor, Lena knew she couldn't just present the evidence. Tanaka would deny it, destroy it, kill the junior executive and erase the trail. They had to be smarter. She had to cross a line. We can't just show him the transfer, she told Kaido later, back in the suffocating safety of his office. We need him to expose himself.
How?
We set a trap, she said, the idea forming even as she spoke. A financial one. We create a new, fake deal. Something even more lucrative than the Ozaki contract. We leak the details, but with one critical piece of false information. A kill switch account number. When the traitor passes that number to the Ozaki clan and they try to access it, it will not only alert us, it will trigger a cascade that freezes their primary assets. Kaido watched her, his expression intense. You want to use my empire as bait. I want to use their greed against them, she countered. It's the only way. What she did next was morally gray, a step into his world from which she could never retreat. She spent a day fabricating documents, creating a ghost company, and routing untraceable funds. She became an architect of a corporate assassination. She planted the data, and they waited. It took less than 12 hours. An alarm pinged on her laptop. The trap had been sprung. The traitor was Tanaka himself. The junior executive was just a pawn. Tanaka had used his credentials to authorize the payment. When Hideo brought Tanaka to the office, he was defiant, arrogant. "This is absurd. The woman is a liar." Lena simply turned her monitor toward him. On the screen was Tanaka's personal banking information, every transaction, every secret account, and a live feed showing the Ozaki clan's accounts being frozen one by one. His face turned ashen. He had been surgically dismantled, not with a blade, but with a keyboard. After he was taken away, the silence in the room was heavy. The adrenaline faded, leaving a strange, vibrating tension. Kaido walked over to her, stopping so close she had to tilt her head back to look at him. His dark eyes searched her face. "Everyone in my world fears me," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Or, they want something from me. You looked me in the eye and told me I was wrong." "I was just protecting my client's interests," she said, the words feeling thin and inadequate. "No," he said, taking another step closer. She could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You were holding me to account." "No one has done that since," he trailed off, the name of the woman in the photograph hanging unspoken between them. It was a confession, not of love, but of a respect so profound it bordered on reverence. A dangerous, honest admission. The war was not over. The Ozaki clan, enraged and financially crippled, made a final, desperate move. The message came not as a threat, but as an ultimatum, delivered to Kaido's second-in-command. "Give us the accountant. The woman is the only thing we want. Give her to us, and the bloodshed stops. Refuse, and we burn your empire to the ground." Starting with her, the enemy had made it personal. She was no longer a complication. She was the target. Kaido's plan for the final confrontation was a model of military precision. A meeting, arranged on neutral ground, a closed art gallery in Ginza. He would go with a small, elite team. He intended to end the Ozaki threat permanently. Lena was to remain in the penthouse, under the guard of 20 of his best men. She was to be kept safe, a precious asset locked in a vault. But as she watched him prepare, saw the cold, controlled fury in his eyes, she knew he was walking into a trap. His rage over the threat to her was making him predictable. While he focused on cutting off the head of the snake, the Ozaki clan would have a secondary team ready to exploit the chaos. They weren't just after revenge. They were after his entire infrastructure. She could not let that happen. While he was gone, she acted. She was not a soldier, but she had her own weapons. With the access Kaido had given her, she initiated a series of complex, layered financial transfers. She didn't steal from him. She moved his liquid assets, shifting them into newly created, encrypted accounts tied to a holding company she'd built for the fake deal. She created a firewall, a financial fortress he didn't know he needed. Then she did something bolder. She used an anonymous burner phone to send a single, untraceable message to the head of a rival Yakuza family, one who despised the Ozaki clan but remained neutral in their conflict with Kaido. The message contained the gallery's location and a simple hint: the Ozaki leadership is exposed. Their assets are frozen. A power vacuum is imminent. She wasn't rescuing him. She was changing the terms of the war. She was turning his tactical battle into a strategic rout. She was never meant to be rescued passively. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The Ozaki clan, caught between Kaido's lethal assault and the unexpected arrival of a third party, was annihilated. By the time the sun rose, they were history. Kaido returned to the penthouse just before dawn. He was untouched, his suit immaculate, but the air around him crackled with the violence he had just orchestrated. He found her by the window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gray and rose. He said nothing for a long time. He knew what she had done. Hideo would have reported the massive, unauthorized fund movements. He should have been furious. She had usurped his authority, moved his money, acted without his permission. He came to stand beside her, his presence a solid, grounding weight. "My entire liquid reserve," he said, his voice quiet. "You moved it, hid it, and you invited the Hayashida clan to my fight." "You are focused on the threat," she said, not looking at him. "Not the opportunity. They were going to hit your banks while you were busy at the gallery. You would have won the battle and lost your empire." He was silent for another moment. Then he moved, turning to face her. He reached out, his touch surprisingly gentle as his fingers brushed her jaw, tilting her face up to his. His thumbs stroked her cheek, a small, intimate gesture that felt more significant than any kiss. "You saved my empire," he acknowledged, his voice raw. "I protected my asset," she replied, the words a challenge, a claim of her own. A slow smile touched his lips, a rare, startling sight. It transformed his face. "You are not an asset, Lena," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You are the foundation." That was his acknowledgement, the undeniable truth. In that moment, she understood the cost. Her old life, the quiet world of numbers and balance sheets, was gone. It had burned away in the fire of the last few weeks. She could never go back. She had crossed a line and found she was not afraid of what was on the other side. His cost was clear, too. In her, he had found a new vulnerability, a center to his world that was not made of steel and concrete. A weakness he would have to defend for the rest of his life. He did not kiss her.
He did not need to.
He simply stood with her, his hand still cradling her face, as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the floor. She looked out at the sprawling city below, the endless landscape of steel and glass. It was no longer just a view. It was a kingdom, and she was no longer a visitor. She had made her choice. The silence between them was not empty. It was the beginning of everything.